Hi, Rachel.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me. So, this is episode 4 of Queer Talk, and I'm really excited to have you. Actually, I'm excited to end the year with you because I think your work and the way you hold yourself, your expertise really sum up a lot of the kind of work that Fighting Fear likes to do, but also that I know you've been championing for a number of years now. So it'd be great to hear a little bit more about you and what you're currently working on.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Rachel Moore. I'm an LGBTQI activist. That's how I like to present myself. I've been an activist for I'd say more than 10 years now, predominantly working in Brussels and Belgium in general. I'd also, claim myself to be a bi activist, but but yeah, that's possibly a different conversation. Yeah, so I do a lot of different things. I'm working as a D&I, so diversity, equity, and inclusion expert and consultant. I also work as a facilitator, and I'm also doing a lot of work with Rainbow Nation Brussels, which is an organization that I co-founded in 2018. And we work predominantly with LGBTQI persons who are Black and or of color. And we work in different overlapping areas such as mental health, community building, and just overall support.
Fantastic. So thinking about the mental health support that you offer, I know you briefly spoke about it with me a while ago, but if you could just explain a little bit more about that project that you're currently working on.
So yeah, the current project that we're working on with Rainbow Nation is basically the creation of a directory for LGBTQI people, for them to be able to find a mental health specialist. Well, we're starting with mental health, so them to be able to find a mental health specialist more easier in the region that they live. So there's like different websites like this already exist in other countries such as the UK, such as the US. Even France has a directory such as this, but it's a lot more broad. So there's definitely examples of it out there. Like basically, what I'm doing is trying to recreate the same thing, but for here in Brussels. And I say it's for LGBTQI people, but it could also be used by. I see this, this tool being used by broader society as well. And it basically stems from a personal need of needing a mental health specialist, a psychiatrist or psychologist uh, in the past, and just finding a lot of difficulties in order to find a person who understood my particular backgrounds and where I was coming from. And, it's just good to be able to find a psychologist or a mental health practitioner who understands, the cultural sensitivities that you may be, just basically experiencing without you having to do all the pedagogy in that particular session when meeting them. So that's one thing that we're working on right now.
Fantastic. And you said it'll be looking at therapists in Brussels. Will you be looking at other areas as well, like outside of Brussels, Flanders, Wallonia?
Yes, definitely. Like we do want to make this a Belgium-wide site. We're going to be starting with Brussels, of course, because we're based in Brussels. But definitely, we are working with different specialists outside of Brussels because we really want to make sure that people, especially in rural areas, that they can also, go to a website, go online, and actually find somebody, find someone that they can actually talk to. This will also include having access to mental health practitioners who actually do online consultations, which is something that's quite new here in Belgium.
Tell
Uh,
me about it. Tell me about it, Rachel. I mean, like, I really struggle with Belgium and online. Like, I feel the rest of the world is quite like online friendly, or at least the Anglo-speaking world anyway. I've been online for way before it was cooler, way before the COVID pandemic and everything. But I find here like people really struggle with that. Why do you think that is?
Because Belgium is always fashionably late to everything. As I've said, well, I usually say that, or I've heard actually that people say that even if the end of the world was going to happen in Belgium, it would still take 50 years to actually arrive. So yeah, everything happens a little bit late, and it's just a case of, I guess, culture and infrastructure and different ways of utilizing the internet. And I think, Belgium still is very much holding on to this aspect of, no, you need to, see someone in real life. You need to actually physically be present for a lot of things. But the digital world is coming more and more, is encroaching more and more into our real time or on offline life. So that's what I like to say. I mean, we basically do a lot of different things now through the internet, and I think slowly but surely Belgium is catching on. Having a digital ID card, being able to access your information even online through the governmental portals. This is something that like definitely had to move faster with regards to the pandemic. So they're getting to grasp with the fact that everything is being digitalized a lot faster now.
Thinking about the specific communities that you might work with, so obviously Black communities and other people of color or global majority people, do you think with this platform, this app, will it be a platform, an app? Like,
It will be a website.
okay, with this website, do you think it will engage more people online, people of color online more so than if it was in face to face? I mean,
I
I
think
understand that the therapists themselves would probably offer both, but just generally speaking, in your experience, do you find or have you found that people of color would more readily or less readily opt for online services?
I think that people of color will opt for online services as long as they're able to build that connection and build that trust. I think we're going to still have, I mean, a lot of importance is still going to be given to actually in life or real time meetings, but then there will be a shift to a digital way of working, which also just makes sense because, as people of color, we are under a lot of different types of constraints, be they financial, be that time, be it energy. And so basically doing a lot of things online really does help us move forward and gives us more tools to actually move in the circles that we take up space in. I believe that people of color and Black people have always taken advantages of all the tools that are readily supplied to them. So I tend to think that Black people and people of color are already, utilizing digital ways of getting the help that they need, just because moving in society is also very difficult.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I think it's already something that's happening. People are using these websites. That's why they still exist. People are trying to find, psychological help. People are trying to, look elsewhere for different remedies and different solutions to the ills that they may be facing. So it kind of makes sense.
It's something that I personally noticed myself when I was working in London, and I was working in the Grenfell service, which was predominantly serving people of color, specifically Black and Arab communities, North African Arab communities. And what we noticed, at least with the Black communities, like which specifically African and African countries and Caribbean countries, that it engaged them more, specifically men. A lot of men were and boys were more readily engaging with online services than in-person services. Do you
Well,
think?
that makes a lot of sense because, if you have to go somewhere, there might be a stigma on a particular place, on a particular area. I remember when I was volunteering for like, HIV cafes, back in, 10 years ago, there was lots of HIV cafes in Belgium, and you'd have them all, sprinkled around the country. And sometimes nobody would show up because they knew the timetable, and they knew that in this particular cafe at this particular hour, that's when people who have HIV or AIDS, or people who were affiliated to people who have HIV or AIDS, would actually meet up. And so there was a stigma put on the actual place. And so it makes sense, it removes a level of shame, and it actually puts in place a level of access, which is just more opening and freeing for particular people to actually use these particular services. So it makes a lot more sense when
Yeah.
you remove the shame, when you remove all of these other hurdles, societal pressure, how you'll be viewed by your community. Then of course they're going to utilize the services.
Yeah, I know in Belgium it's quite hard to find these kind of racialized stats, but in the UK we have access to that, right? Or at least in UK, Anglo countries generally again, and also Scandinavia. Scandinavians tend to collect data too,
Mhm.
but for whatever reason, well, we know the reason, but yeah, anyway, um, one of the things also we've seen is that people of color obviously also sometimes have multiple jobs. Uh, but especially the intersection between people of color and LGBTQ people, specifically if you look at, say, sex workers, trans people, or other marginalized groups or more marginalized groups within the LGBTQ community, they may have multiple jobs. So this point you made about moving around being quite difficult, I can imagine that makes it quite easy for someone to come for an online session, especially if they're juggling multiple jobs or even a voluntary position or something else and having to take care of XYZ uh, on top of things on top of their therapy. I mean, I just anecdotally, if I think about some of the people I worked with in London, some of the people of color that were male, often a lot of the sessions were done from their cars while they were on a job at work, after like in their lunch breaks and things like that. So
Mhm.
I never really put it in the way that you put it, but yeah, I think that completely makes sense.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. Like people don't tend to understand that, uh being an LGBTQI person, or being a person from a marginalized or underserved community, is that one of the issues that we face is that we just don't have the privilege of time. People usually say that there's 24 hours in the day. I would halve that for BPOC, Black and people of color, because they just don't have that type of time. Like you've said, black and people of color are juggling a lot of different roles, be it professionally, be it society wise. There's a lot of things going on, so basically having access to tools such as a website, or such as consultations online, will definitely help them get the help that they are desperately looking for. So yeah, that it makes total sense. Time is a privilege at the end of the day. People tend not to think about it in that way. If
Mhm.
you have time, then you have basically a lot more power to do different things. And a lot of people tend not to think about how much privilege that affords you when you have time to do different things.
Completely. Thinking about what you said earlier about your own personal experience of psychiatry or psychology, is there any specific anecdotes that you could give that kind of demonstrates the need for for this amazing project?
Well, I'd say this project really does stem from a personal experience. I remember during COVID, I was, suffering from a lot of different ills, and definitely mentally, and I needed to find a psychologist or a mental health specialist for me. And my main issue was, okay, I need to find a psychologist, but I also want to be able to be vulnerable, and I want to be able to, build that trust, and, be in these particular spaces. And so a friend of mine basically volunteered to come with me to the sessions whilst I was trying to find a psychologist. And I remember going to this one psychologist, and I was with my friend who was there, and I basically explained why I wanted to have my friend present, in order to, advocate for me, in order for them to have an objective view at the session, and basically help me, also be vulnerable during these sessions. Um, of course, the psychologist really did not take a liking to this. They became exceptionally defensive. And then we ended up leaving the session. And my friend was like, no, we're not going back to that psychologist. It's really not happening. But the funny thing is that, because around the same time, I got into an altercation with my past employer, and it was quite public. And I think that psychologist then saw what happened and then decided to write me an email, basically apologizing for their behavior during that particular session. And I think that a lot of times this type of thing, this type of apology really doesn't happen with the majority of people, especially people who are Black and brown. And I'm sure that that psychologist has also Black and brown clients, but I was in a particular position where I didn't feel ready to trust. I was very, very vulnerable. But just having that other person in the room in order to advocate for myself really, really, really did help. And yeah, I mean, that psychologist, they apologized, and I'm happy that they did, but I'm sure that that really and rarely ever happens.
Hmm. I mean, I'm just thinking about this situation that you describe. I mean, at the same time, I can think of so many times where we would advocate for someone coming with you to a meeting, whether it's a work meeting, some sort of disciplinary meeting or some sort of HR meeting, where we would say, oh, actually, maybe it'd be helpful if you have someone with you to support you. Yet when you're feeling in a vulnerable position like you were, to be told actually you can't have someone with you, even though it's someone you trust and they may even probably know about some of the difficulties that you're going through, which is why you're asking them to be with you, that's denied. At the same time, I'm not surprised because again, it's this kind of Eurocentric idea of therapy that it's a
Mhm,
very individual thing, it's a very individual and private experience, and
mhm.
or that's what makes you safer rather than actually, you saying, I've got this trusted person with me and this will help me engage further as a starting point.
Yeah,
What?
so I feel like the psychologist definitely made it about them
Mm,
when the session was supposed to be about me. And it also really underlines that, their view of mental health care is very individualistic. Whereas for me, mental health care is also, it's not only about the individual, it's also about the communities that they're a part of. If I'm bringing myself to a session and I'm bringing somebody else with me, I'm bringing my community with me. It's also about collective care. I'm also, communicating to my community, listen, I'm not doing well. I really need your support. And then they support me and they come with me to this particular session. And then they're also able to advocate for me when I'm not able to do it for myself. And I think that's something that, as you said, the European way of looking at care is detrimental to the mental health of Black and brown people. And when we talk about those, cultural sensitivities, this is also one of them. And also a lot of Black and brown people won't feel like they can actually bring somebody into a session. This is something that I tell people a lot of times. Be sure to bring somebody with you that also is going to is going to play witness to what is happening. You may not be in the right state to advocate for yourself, to defend yourself, to come up with the terminology that you would possibly need. Another person being there can ground you, can stabilize you, but then can also speak for you, also be your voice when you don't feel like you have one. And that's extremely important.
and we know, for mental health work and disorders that sometimes people do struggle to advocate for themselves, and their lack of confidence can block them from being able to assert themselves in the way that they normally would, or even know how to. So the idea that this was I'm just sorry to hear that. I'm sorry that you experienced this. I hope you were able to find someone who was suitable in the end.
Yes, in the end, I did find a psychiatrist that really does do the work and really gives the space, and we have the trust. And so I am I have now found a psychiatrist that does a very good job, and my psychiatrist is a white woman. But this white woman, I've been able to talk to about their own, biases, about how to work through these things, not directly. I mean, like, yes, directly with her, but not from, day one, where we talked about all of this. She
Silence.
reassures me. Yeah. The entire list of like, are you working on these particular biases? But it's something that we occasionally do have. We do have this conversation where you do understand that this is a cultural, a cultural sensitivity, or this is something that you might not understand, and maybe you need to do a little bit more research on this. And she's very open and welcoming to that type of information. She onboards this information very well, and that is basically what I wanted. But I understand getting a psychologist, psychiatrist, mental health specialist that also looks like you can definitely help you move forward. Not all of them have to look like you, but I just wanted someone who was willing to listen and also willing to put in the work.
Mhm.
Because we live in a society where it's a never-ending journey of learning. It's a continuous journey of learning, and so that's how I view things. And as long as you're willing to learn, then that's how we move forward.
It's just being aware of your own biases, isn't it? Like we all have them. It's not like anyone can escape from them. We're socialized in the same societies that everyone else is socialized.
Definitely.
So, I mean, one of the things often I'm always shocked by is this idea that, people of color can't be racist or people of color can't be prejudiced towards their own communities. Of course they can. They've internalized the same messages. So
They
why?
can be prejudiced, yes, but I can't be racist.
No, of
As a
course.
black, I
I
can't
meant
be,
more,
yeah.
I meant more, other races towards other races.
Yeah, 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 definitely. I mean, like we do live in a society that basically
Hierarchy.
feeds off a hierarchy, and we know who's at the bottom, and we know who's at the top, and we know who's in between, and we know what type of power that they all hold. And so it's also being aware of that and not shying away from that reality, because that is the reality of our society. And I think a lot of people don't want to accept that particular reality. Whereas if you do not accept that, then it defeats the purpose of actually trying to move forwards. You cannot move forward if you do not accept that we live in a particular society that is built and sustained and upheld on hierarchies, be they social, financial, class. All of these different ways are they're
Is
all
that
hierarchy.
is about the I mean, if you look at it in a purely color perspective, is the issue of closest to whiteness.
Of
Uh,
course.
about those who are closer to that have higher privilege versus those who are further away from it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah. Okay, just thinking, going back to your project, it's a fantastic project. I am really looking forward to hearing more about it. When is your launch? Do you have a launch?
So the launch will be next year. We're looking towards the month of April, May. So in between those 2 months, definitely I would like for it to launch before the next Pride, so that people always get very excited and work themselves up when Pride happens, and so that would be something that would be a nice way to welcome in that particular. I don't know, like in my head, I call it like the gay New Year. Every single Pride that comes, it's like the gay
Already done
or the
this.
LGBT the LGBTQI New Year. So that's basically our New Year, and so that's when I would plan for the launch of the website.
Fantastic. And how can people find out more about that, but also Rainbow Nation generally?
So Rainbow Nation is basic. We're on all platforms. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. We have our own website. So it's www.rainbownation.brussels.org. We're also on Instagram on the Rainbow Nation. I think it's _rainbow_nation_Brussels. And yeah, you can find us everywhere. If you want to contribute or ask questions, definitely, send us an email or send me a message on Instagram. I'll be happy to answer.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rachel, for your time. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. I'm always learning something new from yourself. So I wish you all the best with this project. It sounds amazing, and I'm sure it will help so many people who definitely need it.
Yeah, I hope so too. I just want to add on is that when we talk about the LGBTQI community, that we talk about, Black and brown people, we talk about sex workers, we talk about people who are living with a disability, we're talking about people who are living at, marginalized sectors of our community. So that's what I mean when I say LGBTQI plus. Like it encapsulates all of these different communities. So I really want to put that forward.
Thank you so much for that. So this was Rachel, and she was talking about Rainbow House and her work. Not Rainbow House, sorry, Rainbow Nation. Apologies. We won't go there. We won't go there.
We
Rainbow
won't.
Nation.
We definitely will never go there again.
Oh, definitely not. Okay. Rainbow Nation.
Yeah.
And you can find out more about that on her Instagram and website. So this is Fighting Fear. Fighting Fear is a community for queer people by queer people. And you can follow us on our Instagram page, Fighting Fear Community, or on our website, www.fightingfear.co.uk. Thank you.